Hello, Gaston County. Welcome to episode number 161 of Gaston's Great, a podcast highlighting some of the great things happening in and around Gaston County. I'm your host, Stephen Long. We're coming to you once again from the international headquarters of GSM Services right here in downtown Gastonia. We have another great guest today. I'm very happy to have Mike Sumner on the podcast today, who I saw you were officially the vice president of Sumner Group, but aren't you also the founder?
I am the founder, but I work with my wife, so there's no issue there. We know who's the boss person in the office.
Yeah, we all assume that. But anyway, I just wanted to make sure that I meant to ask you that before we started recording. I mean, getting the introduction right is kind of important. However, that's only one of the reasons that I wanted to have Mike on. Mike and I have been friends for a long time. We're partners in business as far as he does a lot of stuff we do a lot of stuff with each other. He's been a great partner of ours for a very long time, but primarily he's shown a great commitment to our community, him and his family. And so, that's really what I wanted to talk to him about, his leadership and his community journey here in Gaston County. So Mike, it's great to have you on and welcome to the podcast.
Hey, it's great to be here. I'm really excited about being so selected so early. 161. Wow, that's okay. I can see the meeting around here. Okay, we had 106.
You were the first one this week, Mike.
Okay, that makes it a lot better.
So you were first this week.
To
be fair, the first 150 were almost all nonprofit organizations for the most part, so we could say you're 11.
Okay, I'm 11. Now that sounds just a lot better. I'm 11.
Does that make you feel better?
It makes me feel a little bit better. But anyway, it's great to be here. I've listened and watched, and I'm just really excited that we have now that the communication vehicles in this community have really dissipated somewhat. What I mean there, you can't read the morning paper to get the news, and we are the largest community in the state without a TV station. And our TV station, WJZY, that's licensed to Gaston County, of course, is in Belmont. It was supposed to be in Belmont, but it's in Charlotte. All our radio stations over here primarily are networked with other stations. So it's efforts like what you're doing here, Stephen, that really helps get the word out. And we need this. We need more of this. So I'm very excited about being
Well, like I've said many times, especially the last year or two, is if you had told me we would be recording episode 161 when we started this way back in 2021, I would have said, we were, hey, let's see if we can do 20 episodes and see what happens, But here we are. So, again, I appreciate you saying that. If you didn't notice that, Mike is I would call him an expert on marketing, in advertising and, relationships. I think it's something that I've learned that Mike is really, really excels at, and that's another big reason I want him on. So, Mike, the question we always start with, and you have a 3-hour limit on this question. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Anything that you'd like to share?
Well, it's not that complicated. I'm grew up in Gaston County. My grandfather on my mother's side was 5 generations here. He was a blacksmith right on the corner of Main and 321. Everybody knows that now is the Peter Wheel, but it was Warren Blacksmithing through about 1914. And on my dad's side, my father's family were in textiles. And so I sort of grew up like a lot of us did, coming downtown, going to the basement at Belk's, going to the mini fish camps that really identified and made us who we were at the time. Going to Mary Jo's cloth store, all these things that were part of growing up as a young boy, and I knew I needed to be here because I love Gaston County, I love the area, and I'm married to my partner, business partner, Jackie. We have 5 children and we have 8 grandchildren, and it's Gaston County. You'd have a hard time getting me out of Gaston County because I love what it stands for, and more than anything else, it's the people that make our fabric what it is today.
Well, again, I appreciate that, and you know what? I don't think I'd ever heard the blacksmith story. I don't think I knew that.
Yeah. Well, it was called Warren's Blacksmithing.
Okay.
My cousin, who got the anvil has gifted it to me because I'm kind of the historian of the family, and we're going to put it out. And I was going to take it down to the pita wheel, and I've got the old stationery and some photographs, and blacksmithing sort of went out of style in the early 1900s.
Right.
But it was interesting because the yard where the horses were in it was behind it, and the building I'm in downtown was built in 1907. But at the time the blacksmith shop was active, that's where the horses were. So it's kind of nice to sit in my office realizing that, back 170 years ago, my great-great-grandfather was making money by selling, putting shoes on horses. And
that's interesting.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about, we mentioned a little bit about what you do, as you just mentioned, but what inspired you to get in your line of work? I know your family well enough to know that, you're a diverse family and what all you brothers are doing. And so kind of what led you to what you're doing today and have been for how long?
Well, we'll celebrate 40 years in business, which is we're real proud of, and next year. So we're very excited by that. But I think the thing that got me into it is I love promotion. I was kidding with my brother Rob over the weekend. Back in the middle 60s, we had a newspaper called the New Hope Happenings, where we actually wrote the newspaper out in longhand. We sold ads, and my father took it to his place of business and ran mimeographed copies of it. And then we sold these newspapers everywhere, and we put all kind of gossip, and we just made up stuff, and it became a real popular item for a while. And then the summer ended.
Were you inspired by the episode of Andy Griffith when Opie and his buddies were printing out the gossip newspaper?
Well, it happened about the same time. I do remember we didn't have Barney to tell us. We had to put some salacious in there, but there was enough going on in our neighborhood. I remember a couple of things like B.B. Banner lived behind us, and someone threw a cherry bomb on top of their shed, and that made headlines. And I remember that that some
of our listeners don't know what a cherry bomb is. Probably,
no, it may have
firecracker,
been a big firecracker. Yeah. And then I remember Congressman Basil Whitener's daughter. The Whiteners lived down in our neighborhood, and she broke up with her boyfriend, and we heard about that, so we put that in there also. So we had a good wide readership, but I got inspired because I enjoy it, and all the way through school, I was always seemed like I was working. Started a job in radio, and then went over to a station that many people don't remember, but it was a leader. It was called Big Waves in WROQ, and there was a guy named Murphy in the morning who. I'll never forget, we came to a place called Mr. K's in downtown Gastonia. And
clothing shop, right?
Yeah, clothing shop. For big and tall, we have it all. That was the position line. And I remember going to that clothing store, and there were about 400 or 500 people there, and they were registering to win a kind of one of these little hot rods they kind of redid, and the person won it there from Gastonia. And Mr. K thought that was the neatest thing in the world.
Oh, that's cool.
And I always was involved in stuff like that. I worked for the Chamber of Commerce here in Gastonia for about 2 years, and I loved doing that. I worked with a number of new businesses, but it really didn't fit my skill set. It was more Donnie Hicks is the absolute right person to do those kind of things. But I enjoyed it and learned a lot, and I think that at that point in time, I decided I needed to get into working for an ad agency, and I worked for one for a while down in Greenville that had offices in Atlanta. And after about 2 years, I just said to myself, I can do this. I can do it. And so I started with this me, and then we now have 14 employees, and we're just real committed to doing it. We enjoy it. We have great clients. GSM's been a wonderful client, but our roster of clients, I think we're very proud of. People like Watson Insurance, Community Foundation, United Way. We've worked with American Eford for years. Also, back in the days when Far Yarns was in the textile business, we were also worked with Carolina Freight. At one time was a big force in Gaston County, as well as Tycaro. So we've worked with a lot of industry here in Gaston County because we're here and we work hard, and And
yeah, but you also have expanded beyond Gaston County in your business as well, right?
Yeah, we have.
So I think that's important. I mean,
yeah. You know, my father always said that an expert is somebody who comes in from out of town. and it's funny. We work with a big hospital out east, and work with a couple credit unions in Raleigh, and we also do some work in Kentucky and down in Arkansas. So we've bounced around a lot, and we enjoy it. One of the things we're most proud of is an average for ad agencies. Excuse me, I can't call it anymore. It's branding companies. That's the new change.
Yeah.
For branding companies, the average length of service generally is about 6 years, and our agency is about 17 years. So we're real proud of that, because you keep the business if you work hard. And
that's interesting, though, your comment about your dad saying experts are from elsewhere, right?
Yeah.
And that's just not true, but it's funny because we do think that,
Oh, he can't do my work. I've
That's
known
right.
that boy
Yeah,
since he was in diapers.
I remember early when we started doing a lot more, especially residential work in Mecklenburg County. Occasionally, I would get that. You said, your company is from where? From Gastonia? Ooh, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
It's just funny to think back on that now, because people from Gastonia don't know what they're doing.
And that's one of the things that we fight over here more than anything else, because we don't have our own. I hate to get off on dictators. I'm not meaning this to any political thing, but dictators anywhere, they seize the communication vehicles. Well, a dictator could not work in Gaston County because there are not really any
media outlets.
And so that's our big problem. I mean, when the guys in Charlotte on the morning talk show start talking about us, really there should be more of a voice. And the problem is a lot of people don't understand that Gaston County has more incorporated municipalities than any county in the state. We have, if you look at Delview as one, it's still right at 12. And everybody, no one really gets together. There's a lot of separation between what people in Belmont want and people in Cherryville. And then there's bigger separation between what Gastonia wants and the rest of the county. And that causes problems because it's hard to get everybody together. And there have been programs. I mean, it started in the early 80s. Look Up Gaston was a wonderful concept. And all these other concepts that you've been involved in, Stephen, we spend so much time trying to speak with one voice. A lot of energy is wasted, and I think that hurts us more than anything else, because you take a county like Cabarrus. They've got Concord and Kannapolis, and they're the two big ones, and they get a lot. Same thing up in Lincolnton. It's Lincolnton, and you look at all these towns. Catawba's the same way, and I think that we've had a lot of, this is a lot of duplication of services and other things, but.
Yeah, I think that I would say that the last few years, I'm seeing it's a little. It feels a little different anyway. That the view of Gaston County, and even internally, I think it's a little more, positive in general. But yeah, it's always difficult, to bring everybody together for anything, right? So what about? So you just covered a lot, in a short period of time there. 40 years in your industry. We hadn't even touched on what you personally and your family has done for our community, but we like to touch on when we're talking to individuals like you who we view as community leaders, whether you like it or not, or accept that or not. You're viewed as somebody who. So what would you take on your career, looking back, everything you've learned, leadership lessons you've learned, leadership advice that you've been given, and then kind of just how do you go about leadership in your business and community and family, and just how would you talk about that briefly?
Wow, use both sides of paper if necessary. That's what a friend of mine always says. What are the causes and effects of World War I and II? Use both sides of paper if necessary. I would say this. I think it all comes back. One of my mentors is a man out east, and I won't mention his name, but he said something that really resonated well with me. He says, if you have a diamond mind and you're mining for diamonds, you go in every day with your lunch, be there when you're supposed to be there, take your pick and your hammer out and get to it. Take your lunch break. At the end of the day, be sure everything's cleaned up and go home. That's what it takes. You got to be consistent.
Right.
And so many people want to come into business, back when the .com stuff blew up 20 years ago. And I think we're having a little bit of that now. Everybody, hey, I'm going to start a business. I want to do this.
And I want to be at the top next week.
Yeah, I want to be at the top next week, and I got to have it now. And it's a great idea. But you got to get out there and hit shoe leather. That's one thing my father always said. He said, if you want to sell something or if you want to be successful, I still think something you said earlier that's very important to me, relationships are very important. And I tell people that all the time in my office. You buy and you associate with people you want to be around.
Sure.
And forget, there are plenty of other agencies GSM can use and hire, but we like to think that you have to have touch points with people. And I think all these kind of things are important. My dad had two very, said a lot of things, but one of the things he always said that resonated with me, he would look at me and said, son, a job's worth doing is worth doing right. And that always,
Well, those old cliches are true and stick around because they're true. Of course, I said that backwards, but yeah,
they're true because
yeah, right. I mean, that's why they last and stick. And you hear those over and over time.
Yeah, and I always thought my dad came up with them until I started hearing them everywhere else. But I did hear one that years ago I worked for an entrepreneur who was probably as famous as anybody in Gaston County. His name was Sonny Hancock. Mr. Hancock was an amazing businessman, car dealer, and I remember one day I was in his office. He had opened a facility in Charleston, and I was in there trying to explain. He wanted to get Mazda people involved and all this, and I was just running around like a chicken with my head cut off, like I do sometimes. And I was trying to explain to him why this can't happen, why this has to happen, this is going to happen. And he stood up, looked at me, and he said this to me. I'll never forget. He said, Mike, I don't want a weather report. Just bring the ship in. And that's what we all do sometimes. We're always telling people why you can't do something. Yeah. Just get out there and do it. And I think a lot of people, and I think you're right about Gaston County, I think people are finally realizing, and a lot of this is coming from external places.
Some of it is, for sure.
These builders that are coming down, I drive home down New Hope Road, and actually yesterday I was out driving down Beatty Road, and some condos and townhouses that I thought were being built, there are people living in them now.
Yeah.
And if you don't believe that things are changing, you need to be at right there at Beatty Road at about 7:30 in the morning now. And you're talking about 4 2-lane roads coming together. I'm gonna tell you something. Somebody's got to sit down and say we need some infrastructure issues solved. But anyway, you asked me a question. I went on another rant, but I would say this. I think the one thing is do things right. The other thing is sometimes you're looking for reasons why something can't be done when you just can just do it. And I'm a big proponent of making lists and being sure you check them off, because if you don't have a good understanding on priorities, you won't get anything done.
Yeah, because when I was younger, I had no clue about these type of things that you're talking about. But as I've gotten older, I've studied leaders, read about successful business people, and to your point, the common thread seems to be that persistence. What you're talking about, that showing up and being consistent.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, the Sumner Group is a overnight 40-year success.
Yeah. Well, and things are changing. This AI thing we talked about earlier, Stephen, is
your industry might be one that is impacting as much or more than any others. Yeah,
it really is. I think it's interesting. Just to give you an example, I was at a client's office, and they were talking about what we call an audio image, what everybody else knows is a jingle. And back in the day, I remember very succinctly going to Memphis, Tennessee for Kate's skating rink. They wanted to do a jingle, and we went over there and we met with the writers, and they performed it, and they refined it, and it went on the air. It was probably a $5,000 deal, and it was a great thing they used on radio. And
but how long did it take, right?
It took about a month to get everything done, finished. Skating at Kate's skating rink, feeling fine and feeling free. I remember that line. So anyway, I'm sitting there in a meeting, and a client mentioned the image, and one of the young guys in my office said, well, what do you want the thing to say? What kind of style do you want? And before the meeting was over, he had 2 or 3 jingles, options for less than $15, $20. And
that's insane.
It is insane. And same thing with photographs. You can take a photograph now and make a portrait out of it. And by just buying a simple app, you do it on your phone. And in a lot of ways, it concerns me because, I have artists. But it's still, you got to have a plan to put these things together. But I tell you,
but to get started with that is completely different. Maybe finishing it requires a lot of talent.
Yeah,
but getting started with stuff is
you're right.
At your fingertips now. Where to your point, going to Memphis.
Yeah, I can remember this. I remember I was and the reason I remember that so succinctly, it was in the middle of summer, and I was in you remember the old cars? What was the one with Ricardo Montalban did? I like what they did to my Cordova. It was a Cordova, and my Cordova that I was driving at the time.
That's even before my time, I think, Rachel.
No, it's not. You were around. You didn't mention the fact that I used to live behind you when you were growing up. Yeah.
Fern Forest and Astor Lane.
Yeah, that's right. But I was coming back from Memphis, and the air conditioner went out, and it was the middle of summer, and it was hot like it is today.
That's funny.
I mean, but it seems like we're, I don't know, it seems like we're getting a lot hotter and rainier area, but I don't know that much about the climate change they claim, but something's going on.
Yeah. So you mentioned your dad a few times, and I was fortunate enough to meet your dad. I can't say that I really knew him because he was one of those guys when I was starting to get involved in the community, he was just, this bigger than life character, because I knew all the things that he had done. And so I know that was I think that's a big part for you and your family about community and getting involved because he was behind so many things. So how, your business, your community involvement, how does that play with your work and your mission and your day-to-day stuff? Because you're involved in more things than I think people know.
Yeah, well, the thing about it is he's always said to all four of us to get involved and give back to the community. And that's been, it's sometimes when you have children and grandchildren, it's hard to, there are a lot of Saturdays that we couldn't do things with my father because he was out doing something. But
right.
You have to make, it's been important to us. And people ask me, I was on a number of boards like the YMCA and the Salvation Army, and those boards are fine. But people ask me what was most impactful for me was I got into the Big Brothers program when I was in school. And I coached basketball from about 1976 through about my son went off to college in 2009. So that's about 30 years. And what makes it so very special to me is when I can hardly go out without seeing somebody who comes up and says, "Hey, Coach Mike."
Yeah.
So many times I have no idea who it is because it's been 30 years, and to be recognized, I say to myself, well, I hope I did something to that young man's life to help him. And, it's not like you're giving back to a big organizations. We've got great organizations here, but I think my recommendations to people is there's so many people that need help. The food banks, the crisis assistance ministry was one of the things my father was so very proud of being involved in starting. And we used to go down there a lot on Thanksgiving and serve meals. And he used to look at me and said, "Dad," he would say, "Son, this is always filled at Thanksgiving, but you need to come back, the Saturday after Thanksgiving. That's when they need help." And so we always talked about that as a thing, the Saturday after Thanksgiving. We talk about that a lot around our family because people need to understand that need is, everybody seems to be more generous around holidays. And when it gets cold, there's warming stations and cooling stations. Right. But the need's 365 a year.
It is.
And I really, it seems like there are a lot of people that are all across the country that are sort of falling through the cracks, and I would recommend to everybody to get involved some way.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I've seen it, and I say that because I've seen it firsthand. We interact a lot professionally, but it's also through the things that you are involved with, and you have in you personally, and Jackie and Sumner Group has been gracious to help with some of the things that we're involved with too. So I'm grateful for that. So looking back, is there something that stands out? You may have already mentioned something that you're most proud of in your professional career, in your community work, family, just anything that stands out when you look at them and say, "Well, yeah, that hit the mission
Yeah, I think probably one of the most astonishing things, I've been working with my wife close to 40 years, and she's not actually
killed you yet.
Killed me. So the fact that I'm here today, I think, is a testament. And we have a new open office, and she's on complete one side, and I'm on the other side now. So we're a little more.
Was that by design?
It's totally by design. But one of the things I think is important that people forget about. I had this saying that everybody is one generation from obscurity, and what that means is most people know their parents and they know their grandparents, but there was a study done where about 8 out of 10 people don't know their great grandparents, and they don't because. And right now we should know everything about them because we got we can get everything, but I just think we have to honor the people that came before us, and I think that's very critical to people like. We
didn't get here on our own.
We didn't. People like Albert Myers, people like Leon Alexander that made Wix what it is today, the Karstoffen and Farr family, the Stowe family. You got people like Ben Rudelsel and Tom Eford, and you've got, Mr. Robinson. You've got Duke Kimbrell. The list goes on and on and on of people that have made Gastonia, foundation strong, and so many times
the Sumner family.
Well, I didn't say that. I just say that.
I know you did.
I'd say the Long family. I mean, gosh, I mean,
that's why you're good for the community because you didn't bring up your family name.
Well, I don't know about that. All I'd say about it is this: is I would say that we have to. You asked me, and I think it's important that we honor what's gone on in the past, and when things like and because you have to know that so you can plan for the future because, I think one of the biggest tragedies we've had in Gaston County was when we lost the Garden Parkway, and David Hull would have had that here, and to me, there are two ways to cross the Catawba River, and that I could have said that in 1960. I say the same thing today in 2025. So in the last 65 years, there are only two ways to get across the Catawba River. Do you think there's more? You got all those Amazon plants. You got the big train deal over there. You got the airport. You got all the industry. If you travel between Charlotte and Gastonia now, you know what's happened. And it's time for us to sit down, I think, and say, what would a David Hull do? And quit worrying about all the other issues that are not really that important. Right, in my opinion.
All right, so I appreciate that. Yeah, that's nothing being from Gaston County and being here so long. You got such great insight and seen so many things happen and occur, and kind of related to that. I mean, looking back, something we like to share because you might have somebody out there, some young person who they're in college and they're majoring in marketing or something similar. And they're trying to
It's
decide.
called media services.
Media services. Okay, thank you. Yeah. You're an ad guy, right?
I sell ads.
Branding company and media services. But can you look back? Is there something that stands out as a big factor, a key factor in your business's success over 40 years?
That's a great question. I think one thing is going to work and setting goals and objectives are good. I mean, I went through. There used to be these things called daytimers, and it was a cult, and part of being a daytimer, you had to do your goals and objectives, and I did them for about 12 years in this little. It was just a big fat wallet, and I found some of those things the other day, and to this very day, when at the beginning of every year, I have goals and objectives for myself, and I put them on my calendar, and I think that's important. You really need to, if you want to get somewhere, you got to say, okay, this is how I'm going to get there. And once you do the goals and objectives, you can start thinking about action steps to get to those things. I think that's one thing. I think another thing is what you mentioned earlier, Stephen. Nothing happens quick anymore.
Overnight. Yeah.
You may be able to write a letter quick from AI, but I would tell people we have right now 5 interns at our office, and we probably could have had 20. These are all very qualified. 2 are from Chapel Hill, 1 from State. We've got 1 from Gaston Day and 1 from South Point. We try to hire some high school in, and I tell them all the resumes look the same because they if you're writing for a job, do what your mama would do after you interview for the job or interview for the position. Send a handwritten note to that person. And to this day, I keep
handwritten notes are out of style.
Yeah, except
or
if
it's
you
a
get
lost art.
Unless you're getting one.
That's a better way to put it. I mean, out of style is the wrong phrase. It's a lost art.
It's a lost art, and people, I tell people, another thing I would say is if you think something's maybe not a good idea to do, what you want to think about is, well, how am I going to explain this to my mother? And if you're going to have a hard time explaining to your mother, just don't do it. And I did a lot of those things I shouldn't have done. But I would say this to anybody. I think that when you go apply for a job, and whether it's in HVAC or marketing or banking or whatever, you have to understand something. There are 100 other people who want that job. And what you've got to do is, I tell people all the time, make yourself different. Instead of just sending them a resume, send them a nice package with your logo on it. And follow up with a letter and research that company. And when you go into the interview, have yourself 5 or 6 questions you're going to ask them about their business. And the person that's interviewing is going to go, okay, she's coming in for another one. And I tell people, you just go the extra mile, and that has to do with your business because you're really in the business of selling yourself. And I think that's important. So I think that's just go the extra mile. And when you get in that diamond mine, just don't try to blow it up with dynamite. Just do what you need to do to get there.
Yeah, I think you've been in industry in the business world for so long. Have you seen that kind of change over time, as where the expectation has changed to where people in general, entrepreneurs, they expect the success to come quicker and sooner, in the world we live in now with just, because they're hearing all the time. Yeah, by age 25, you should be at the top of the game.
Everybody thinks that, and I was at a conference in Denver, and I felt my age. Everybody was in there, and they were selling. I was one of the vendors, and everybody was doing all these wild things. This guy beside me was telling the people that were at the show what was wrong with their website and how they could get it fixed and how terrible the website is. And I just started thinking about that, and I said, that's not how I would approach that. I wouldn't tell somebody how bad their website is. I would say, you have a great website. Here's some things that I think would help a whole lot.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And so I think everybody wants to shock people into hiring them. I see it all the time. All the time. Our clients, I'm sure you get them all the time. Hey, I can do a better job than this, and I'm going to start out by sending you and 5,000 other people the same email. So
yeah.
And you see that all the time. And I think, to your point early, be yourself and let your personality come out in who you are and what you do. And I think one of the things that I wish I'd have done differently, and I know that's one of the questions, but I thought about that a lot, and I think it's slow down a little bit. Slow down, and I know my dad gave something to me one time about it was a guide on if you're doing too much talking, and I wish I'd have read that a little closer. He said, there's certain things you need to listen to people, because when people watch you listen, they think you're a lot smarter than you really are. And he's right.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, listening is a skill.
It is. It's a matter of fact, I would argue it's the greatest leadership skill.
It is.
It's listening for sure.
And
it's not as easy as I used to think it would be.
I'll tell you another thing would be good to do. I used to go to a lot of seminars, and I know you do that a lot too, Stephen. And I remember I learned from a guy a long time ago how to handle a hostile, somebody who's mad. And there are 5 steps, and it's boom, boom, boom. If you do it, it works every time. And I tell people that, and they go, wow, I use that, and it does work. When somebody's angry, you just do a lot of listening.
Yeah.
And then you paraphrase it back to them.
Empathy and listening, and
Yeah, and then all of a sudden you got a deal,
Yeah.
And it's amazing when people do that, sometimes you turn these people around, and they're ready to say, oh, I'm sorry this happened that way. So I think the main thing I would tell anybody is just work hard and be yourself and try to make yourself who you are. Don't try to be somebody you're not, and don't depend too much on all these new AI things. I think AI is wonderful for a lot lot of businesses, and probably my business more than others, but when it comes down to it, you're not really providing anything anybody else can't do.
Well, we're always, another way to phrase that question that I asked earlier was, seems like everybody's, not everybody, but a lot of people looking for the next hack and the next shortcut, and you mentioning AI, so this may be the answer, part of the answer to this next question. So, but what's next for Mike and the Sumner Group, and just your industry in general? Is AI the big thing, or is there what's next for you?
Well, that's a good question. I think AI is going to be very big for the agency. We are doing some different kinds of things. We're trying to. One of the things we're working on, we've hired a gentleman who's very experienced in working in big accounts, Sam Robinson, who's a great guy. He's been a mentor to all of us, and we're looking at trying to think a little bit bigger in terms of how we approach accounts, because obviously you can grow through your existing accounts, increasing their budget, or you can get new accounts. And what we're trying to do is do a nice mix of that. And recently we found out in North Carolina that 5% of all boats are manufactured in North Carolina, and they employ something close to 15,000 people. And it's a huge industry. And one of the things that's missing, there's not any kind of association for boat manufacturers.
Interesting. Okay.
It is interesting. So we went up, there's no big secret to this. We went up to Raleigh, and we formed the Carolina Boat Builders Association. and we're in the process of doing some surveys to some of the big, you got people like Grady White, you got Hatteras, you've got some unbelievable boat builders in eastern North Carolina. Yeah. And there's no representation. And a guy asked me the other day, well, why are you doing that? And I said, well, we've got this third largest community college system in the country, and there's only 2 of them that are teaching anything to do with boat building. That's a disconnect. I said, you probably didn't realize, I didn't realize there are over 106 boat companies in North Carolina.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Need to know that. And, you think about boat building, nobody thinks that's a bad idea. I mean, you get cars, you think, well, that's just a fun industry. So one of the things we're looking at doing is looking at, what can we do to help, create something. A friend of mine years ago worked for a big agency in San Francisco. His biggest accounts were 10 small vineyards, and they got together and developed the whole raisin campaign. The vineyards did. So we're looking at things like that. We've done a lot of that. We work with a bunch of the community colleges.
So making connections.
Yeah, connection. That's what it's about. Yeah, because all of a sudden, it works, and in your industry, it's the same way. I've often thought that my dad always said you need to do 3 things. You need a good HVAC, a good plumber, and a good electrician. He said those are 3 things you got to have because you're going to need them.
Or learn it yourself, yeah.
Yeah. But I really do thank you for having me. I hope I didn't talk too much.
No. Oh, we're just getting started, right?
Okay.
Rachel, we're only 2 hours in at this moment. So there's one topic I'm going to make sure we touch on before we finish. But is there anything that I haven't asked before we kind of get into these last 3 or 4 questions I haven't asked that I should have, or something you'd like to share? I
think there's one question that really bothered me. I thought you would ask. I thought you were going to ask me who is my favorite client at Sumner Group.
Is there any other questions that we haven't asked?
It's GSM Services, because
I bet it is today.
No, I'd like to ask you a question.
Okay.
Has this podcasting 161? Have you learned a whole lot?
I have learned an unbelievable amount about Gaston County and the people and what it takes to get things done, and how many good souls we have in Gaston County, and the people who are making an impact, and how, so it has been very rewarding, and I've met so many great people. Some I already knew, but a lot I'd never met before until they walked in the door here to the conference room. So I think when we kind of started not running out of organization to talk to, I just wanted to keep doing it. So it's been extremely rewarding for me personally, and I hope it's been good for the community and brought some recognition to some of these people who are doing so much in our community.
It's so funny. That's exactly what I thought you'd say, because there's no way you couldn't open yourself up like that. You know, I think more than anything else that we need more people to stop and just listen. And I think our community has big hearts. I remember one time back in the day when I was at the chamber, Gaston County has more churches than almost any county in the country. That was one of the things based on our population.
Yeah.
And they go there because they believe in giving back and worshiping. And I think that's what makes Gaston County strong, that whole fabric. And I think that, you know, if you don't put a light on it like you're doing, it sort of starts seeping away. And I think that, you know, back in the days when, you know, United Way would raise $3 million and there'd be all these PTA drives, you know, we need to get back to doing more of that, helping ourselves over here. I think so.
Yeah, I remember I was on the board, United Way board, the last $3 million campaign, and I just finished a 5-year stint a couple years ago and got back. All that manufacturing, you know, that we had is really what drove that. Like that particular, those $3 million campaigns, all the manufacturing, and once that started leaving, that really left a gap. But other organizations, you know, other things have picked that up. But also, people are just so busy now, and it's just different. So maybe that's another underlying reason. I don't think this was planned, but if we can, you know, if we can get more people to understand the history and hear about the things that we have done in the past and continue to try to do here, I mean, maybe that'll get a few more people interested, involved. So I appreciate you asking that. That's that's a good question. I haven't been asked that question.
Well, at least
not on the air anyway.
Well, I think it's great you're doing it, and I think more people need to do these kind of things. And I think that it would be because this is how a lot of people are consuming their news now. You know, I always tell people, I hear these things all the time, and first thing I ask them is, "Where did you hear that?" And they say, "I read it on Facebook." And I said, "Really? Yeah. Okay, all right. Well, that means it's probably not true."
I saw it on the interweb, so it must be true.
Yeah, it's absolutely funny. And I think that credible sources like this are very good, but at the same time, I really wish our newspaper was back where it was. But that's another whole battle.
Yeah, we could talk about that for a long time, you and I both, because, you know, I have to admit, I miss the daily newspaper. I mean, I would read, especially on the weekends, but I don't even, you know, actually I don't even subscribe digitally anymore.
Well, and you know, in the Gaston Gazette at one time was one of the most powerful newspapers in the state. And I remember when Dwayne McAllister came here, we did their marketing, and they went from an afternoon paper to a morning paper. And I remember that time they had 48,000 subscribers. Now, based on 2.1 people living in each home, you're looking at, you know, right at 110,000 people. So a good portion of the people were reading that newspaper, and people were advertising it. And I understand advertising has changed, but at the same time, you know, it's kind of a chicken and egg thing. You know, the advertising dropped off because the news dropped off. The news dropped off because the advertising dropped off. And it just gets to a point where, you know, you pick up a paper now and all of a sudden you're reading about, I remember we did a deal with them recently, and it was a groundbreaking, and groundbreaking showed up about 2 weeks after the, you know, they're already, but, and it's got to be that way. But when all these papers are owned by chains now, you know, when the Atkins family started that paper, and when Freedom and John Siegel was one of the most strongest leaders we ever had in Gaston County, he was amazing because people knew that he would get behind something. And you talk about these leaders, you know, at one time, Far Yarns and Ty Caro had about 10,000 employees. So if you know, Mr. Karstaffen or Mr. Myers wanted to do a United Way campaign, it got done.
Yeah.
And we need more of that, but at the same time, the whole business landscape's different. I mean, you see all these co-office spaces everywhere. Everybody's in a little office doing their deal, and I understand that. But at the same time, we need to support local people. We need to support local businesses like GSM, like the restaurants that are here, like, you know, the other trades that are here, the cars that are here, because they're the ones giving back. They're the ones providing jobs so people can go and donate and tie it at churches and those kind of things.
Yeah, so that's a great point. So I appreciate that. I appreciate that, Mike, and appreciate your history and everything you know about it. So we're gonna start moving to land this plane, so you can get back to bothering Jackie back at the office. But, you know, a question that we love to ask, and you may have already answered this actually briefly, partially, but I think we'd love to ask this every episode. So, knowing what you know now, Mike, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self? I think you may have touched on that a little earlier about slowing down.
I think, as a matter of fact, it's funny. Yesterday, I went home, and I have become obsessed with my dog. He and I spend all our time together, and we're both, he's an animal has total unconditional love for you. And that's a nice thing to have. And we were riding home last night through that monsoon. I don't know if you guys saw it yesterday.
Oh yeah, I was driving home in it briefly. Yep.
And I got out of the car, and Jackie was going to the grocery store, and so I was sort of waiting on her to bring the bags in. And I was in the garage. She took a little longer because it was a mess out. And for about 40 minutes, I just sat in the garage in a folding chair with my dog watching the rain. And I don't think I don't remember doing that in a long time. Yeah. And I think people need to do more of that. You need to sit back and enjoy what we have here. And, we're so lucky in Gaston County. And I think that we all have to understand that, I think the Lord smiled brightly on us. We can go to the mountains. We can go to the beach. We got so many wonderful things here. And I think just take the time to stop and do things like that and understand that, this is a journey. I hate to sound like a philosophy teacher, but life is truly a journey, and there's no destination other than happiness. And the way you get happiness is through your journey. And do what you want to do. If it's coaching or mentoring or hiking or jogging or swimming, enjoy yourself.
Yeah, that's great. I really appreciate that. So.
Or watch rain.
Well, that goes to slowing down. We live in this world where these devices we carry around, it's a constant stimulation of some type of watching something, listening to something, and reading what I would call sound bites and hearing sound bites and reading headlines as opposed to actually taking the time. To your point about where did you you hear that from, right?
Yeah.
It's oftentimes the headline is all that gets read these days. So that's interesting.
One other point, I went to a seminar last year, and they gave me some great advice. I'll give this advice to people. He said, the worst thing you can do is have alerts on your phone. He said, what you need to do is make your own mind up that I'm going to check my phone this time, and this time. And from that point on, he said, because all of a sudden, as you say, you never get away. And there's been studies done about the blue light on all these things that really impacts your sleeping and a lot of other things. And
do you have any alerts on your phone, Rachel?
When someone texts you.
Well, texting, and actually I don't have an alert when I text, but phone is the only thing that actually, like I don't have any other alerts that come on my phone because I've learned that the hard way.
Yeah, because
the distraction, and I'll still find myself picking it up, even if there's not a notification.
I use
or an alert.
I use my phone for three things primarily. One of them is pictures, photographs. I love that. Second one is emails when I'm not at the office, but if I'm in the office I don't use it. Other one's phone calls, and I think my kids. They know I don't answer text, and what they'll do, they'll call me and say, "Dad, I just text you."
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, that's what happens.
It's normally the opposite. Can you have time for a text? We'll say, "Do you have time for a phone call?"
Yeah, I've never understood the whole idea of text, but I do understand it.
So I'll remember that. I won't text you anymore, Mike.
Well, it's funny how you become sort of slave to that. You just all of a sudden, next thing you know, you go, "What do you do today?" Well, answer a bunch of emails.
I'm not sure, yeah.
I'm not sure.
So, Mike, I love this question, too. If you could have coffee with one historical person, who would it be and why?
Okay. That's one I did think about. I had coffee with the person I wanted to have coffee with. I was in college at the University of North Carolina, and I was living at my professor's house, and she was the general administrator for Margaret Mead, who was a famous anthropologist. Probably the most famous anthropologist, and she came one weekend, and I not only had coffee, I had breakfast with her, and I was more concerned about who the football game was going to be or who I was going out with or whatever. I didn't ask her any questions. I just sat there and listened to her. But the one thing she did say, she was talking about, we were talking about back in the 70s how everything was falling apart, and this is what she said to me, and it's amazing how true it's come. The lady I lived with, the instructor, asked her what she thought was the biggest problem facing America's future. And she looked at me, and she looked at her, and she said, the breakup of the family.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And that is exactly what's happened in this country. Everything is, and that's what's happened. And I think about that all the time, because you don't see a lot of people that are going to. You just don't. To me, we need more of that. We need more family support. And back in the days when there wasn't a mother and father, there was a grandfather and grandmother, and I think we need to think more of that. So I think Margaret Mead would be who I'd like to at least tell her, you were right.
That's good. Yeah, it's interesting because you probably at the time, is it fair to say? Because I know I can look back and look back at interactions, and it takes me years later before I realize the impact of the interaction.
Yeah,
I was too young and dumb, or wasn't listening to realize at that moment that this was an impactful advice that I should have taken sooner.
Well, you think you're kind of in a being restricted by your parents or somebody who's your caregiver, grandmother, aunt, whoever it is, but there's a responsibility, and I think we have a greater responsibility to try to help as much as we can, because quite frankly, there are a lot of people that have, that need it. And to me, I think she nailed it properly. I think we need to be more family-like with everybody.
Listen, this has been really good, Mike. What about, last question? Well, let me give you an opportunity. If anybody is learn about the Sumner Group, where can they go? That's obvious that we want to make sure you get to do that. But, what would you say to encourage some young person? They're getting out of high school, they're getting married, they're getting out of college, or whatever, to encourage them on their career path, on their community journey. What would you say to somebody looking to get started doing that?
I think we talked about it a little bit. I really do think you need to volunteer. The reason we have all those interns at our office is they want something to put on their resume. And I always tell them, when you work on something, put it aside, copy it, whatever you want to do, but have it so when you go into an interview, you can say you've done this. I think you need to find out what you want to do. And if it's in marketing or branding, there are plenty of people. Oh, my goodness. Ad agencies are a good place to start, but everybody needs it. I mean, everybody needs help on social media. I mean, kids are coming out. I have a young man who's starting his 12th grade. He's got 3 or 4 people that they pay him to do their social media because he does a good job at it.
Yeah.
And so I think that just find out. I think it's important that you have experience. As well as I know that first thing you look at is how long. What have you done? You can do case studies and do all this, that, and the other, but have you been down there in the dirt and got your hands dirty? And I think that's important to really get out and have some experience before someone hires you, because you think about what we're doing right now. Can you imagine somebody who wants to start a podcast, and has all this experience and how to do it? I mean, I'm kind of shocked that we don't have more podcast studios. We actually had one here for a while.
Yeah.
But I think it's a great way to communicate with people now. But I think the primary thing is get that experience, and when you go after it, try to be a little different from everybody else. Think about how you want to do it, and remember to thank them for their time, and do some background research on everybody. I think that's the most important thing, because Gastonia's business is doing very well right now, and people are. I think a lot of industries are coming here and. Drive down New Up Road, see all those houses. Yeah. I mean, it's going to be, the next generation, there's probably going to be closer to 500,000 people in Gaston County.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, there are a lot of things happening. So I got one more question, and then I'm going to ask, well, actually 2 more questions. So first, where can people go to learn more about the Sumner Group?
Just SumnerGroup.com. You can, we've got it on everywhere. If you want to come in sometime for a tour, just come by sometime. We're always proud to show our building. We took a building that was over 100 years old and renovated it, and we'd love to show that. We'd love to do that.
Well, just that in of itself to me is kind of a community service endeavor.
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, running a business, frankly, is when you're employing people. And their families, and so even that is.
But Stephen, you don't employ people; you employ families.
Sure. Absolutely, that's what I mean.
It's families, because you have done an amazing job with what you've done here for over 100 employees, 100 families, and it's amazing that you think about it. I bet you 30 years ago, you probably weren't in the top 25 of most employees for a private business because there are all these textile mills.
Yeah.
But look where you are today. You're probably one of the largest ones. I mean, you got
contractors for sure.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
And that's important.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. It means a lot because, the people here go to the mall. They go to the, I say mall,
they spend money here, right?
Spend money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And
so I'm going to give you a chance to talk real quick about something I know you're passionate about. You look at all this paraphernalia you brought. It's got, I'm going to mispronounce it probably, but Madame Mesquite.
Correct.
Goose Club. Yeah. I am familiar with it enough through our interactions, but just I know that's something you feel strongly about. So I'm going to share something about that real quick.
I'll do it real quickly. In 1932, 22 gentlemen, mostly from Gaston County, started to go east to Hyde County. Hyde County is the smallest county in the state in population, 3,000 people. Nobody goes there, but Madame Mesquite is a lake that's only 4 to 5 feet deep, so it's a mecca for hunting. These gentlemen started a club and went for years to the 60s, and then they all passed away. These people are like Governor Cherry. There was Mr. Myers. There was it was amazing the people that were part of this thing, and Mr. Robinson, who started Parkdale Mills, and they went out there until about the 60s, and then it all kind of went away. Well, I went out and found the old clubhouse, and we were renovating it. As a matter of fact,
just moved it, right?
Just moved it, and I sent some pictures of it, and we're redoing it and established it as a little testament to Gaston County, out in the middle of another county. These people that are all from Gaston County went out, and Dr. Moser was another one who was a famous dentist here for years, who was chairman of the hospital board here. Neil Hawkins, who built all these roads all over North Carolina, was a member, and they went out there and did business. That's how they used to do business. So we're going out. It's a nonprofit, and we're hopefully by the end of this year we'll have everything done, and we'll invite anybody from Gaston County. You'll have a welcome mat if you want to come out and take a look at it. I will warn you, it's 346 miles. So,
yeah.
But we're excited about it, and I've been working on it for about 5 years, and to honor these gentlemen who made Gaston County great in another area of the state. So
I would encourage listeners, if you just go get a map out, go to Google Maps or something, and take a look at that. Go east, and you put in a lake, Madame Mesquite. I got to pronounce that right.
Yeah, Madame Mesquite.
I have to slow down when I say stuff, that words I don't know how to pronounce that, Mike. But I just think that's interesting. Again, I know that's something, so I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about that because I know that's something you put a lot of work into. And
my wife said, "Do not talk about that."
Well, you can blame. You can blame me because I brought it up.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, people say to me all the time, "I'll talk to you, but you can't talk about Madame Mesquite." So, but anyway.
Well, listen, I appreciate that,
Mike.
So, listen, I'm gonna finish up with my own quote that I do for the week, and I'm typically intentional about these quotes because I think this speaks a little bit to Mike and Sumner Group and what him and his family have done. But Eleanor Roosevelt said, "A good leader inspires people to have confidence in the leader. A great leader inspires people to have confidence in themselves."
Wow, that's strong.
So I would, before we finish, I just want to, acknowledge kind of you, your family, your parents, you, Jackie, your brothers, Rob, Ernest, and Dolph, and their families. You've done a lot for our community, and all of you have, and our community is better off because you and your families and brothers are here. So I do appreciate that. Things don't happen by chance. Things get done in the community. And I think I mentioned to you after the United Way annual meeting when you got up and spoke, I was just terrific. I was so happy to be there. And when you were able to present the Harold Sumner Award to your brother, and an award that was presented to my father a few years ago.
It sure was.
Yes, that's been 8 or 9 years ago now, probably. Gosh, maybe longer than that. But
I remember when you guys were there.
Yeah.
I can't tell you one funny joke my brother Rob said about that. When we heard that Ernest Sumner was going to get it, Rob said, wonder how that happened. Rob's got dry wit. That was funny.
Well, yeah, that it was, but it was
he
great.
Deserved it. He deserved it.
Yeah, and and on some level, your family has been mentors, and you personally have been mentors to me, and what we're trying to do in the community. So if anybody wants to learn how to serve the community well, all they have to do is look at you and your family. So
thank you very much.
I appreciate that. Absolutely. So Thanks so much to our listeners for taking time to listen to today's episode. Please spread the word if you can about the podcast, and please don't hesitate to contact us here at the email address, which is podcast@gastonsgreat.com. We're always looking for suggestions for future podcast topics and guests. You can find the podcast and subscribe at the website, gastonsgreat.com, or anywhere you can listen to podcasts. Please follow us on our social media platforms, and as Rachel always reminds us, please give us a good 5-star rating. Thanks again to Mike for being our guest today. Gaston's Great is produced and brought to you by Rachel Cowart from GSM Services. I'm your host, Stephen Long. Thanks again for hanging out with us, and please keep coming back to hear more reasons why Gaston's great.